It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, dig into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Kyle Mann, and we're going to be talking about the Babylon Bee's latest book, The Babylon Bee Guide to Wokeness: How to Take Your Wokeness to the Next Level by Canceling Friends, Breaking Windows, and Burning It All to the Ground. Kyle, it is truly an honor, sir. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. There's been an error, though, because you said you interview thought leaders,
Well,
and I'm here. But
thought provokers, maybe people that just provoke conversation, whatever it might be. I was looking at the Amazon listing this morning, and I kind of had to chuckle. The satire even exists in your bios for the Amazon listing. I kind of chuckle. Anything you want to bring out from your bio that is maybe things we need to know about?
oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I don't even remember what I put up there. Did they put the one where I was spawned beneath the Tower Orthanc?
I think it had a certain Lord of the Rings kind of theme to it.
A Lord of the Rings theme. Yeah. So that was not true. That was fact check false satire label on that bio for sure. But yeah, no, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. So if you just want to talk about that for the next half hour, I'm cool with that. Whatever you want to do.
I don't, while that would certainly be fun, I don't think we need to help Tolkien sell any more books. He probably does fine on his own. But in terms of the Bee, I think most of the people in my audience are going to be quite familiar. But since its inception, how has it shifted from not only being satire oriented, but you also have real news now that you're doing as well? I believe it's on Not the Bee. The hard thing is our news cycle right now is so strange. It's hard to tell sometimes which is satire and which is real news. How has it been both continuing with the satire and trying to report actual news?
We don't run Not the Bee directly. So we have the founder of the Babylon Bee kind of left the Babylon Bee. He still owns part of it, but he went off and started doing Not the Bee. So it's kind of a sister site to us. But I mean, that's the thing, is that reality got too crazy for the founder of the Babylon Bee. So he just said, I'm going to go ahead and just report the real news instead. We actually have a quiz on the front of our site right now, Bee or Not the Bee, and you have to guess if it's a real story or not. And it can be pretty difficult, even for me, who wrote a lot of the fake ones.
And I think in terms of, whether we're sharing memes and such that you guys post on the internet, or whether we're looking at your previous book or this new book, some people are going to ask the question, why satire? Are we just trying to offend people? Is this a way to actually, make light of difficult subjects to get people to enter into conversation? Like, why use satire to really tackle some of these controversial issues?
Yeah, just to offend people. That's it.
That's it. That's the only reason.
No, I mean, yeah. So what's cool about satire is, it kind of it's a double-edged sword, and it's multi-layered in that satire can make you laugh and then make you think. It was G.K. Chesterton who said that humor can get in under the door while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle. And that's kind of, the message and vision and mission of the Babylon Bee, is that we do make people laugh. And that's, a lot of times, that's the only goal or the primary goal. Laughter is laughter is something that God created, and it's good for us. And so sometimes, there doesn't need to be a message or a point or a heavy-handed point, at least. And but the humor, it's almost a candy coating sometimes that can make the message go down. So that's what satire does so well, is it takes something that's real and it takes it to its logical conclusion. It exaggerates it. It shows the absurdity. It holds up a mirror. It's a cutting tool that can help cut away some of the trappings and traditions that we've kind of accepted as and started to integrate into our faith or our life, and help to point us to something that's more real and that's more enduring and more eternal. So all of that to say, we tell jokes and hopefully make people laugh, and sometimes make them think too.
Well, and I remember early on, a lot of the content you guys were doing was very church focused. I mean, I've been in the Christian publishing space for a decade plus, and so thought a lot of it was quite hilarious as somebody who's been inside the bubble for so long. And then you guys pivoted into tackling political issues and more cultural issues. Why did you guys expand the conversation away from just the more Christian church focused topics?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a little bit of truth to that. There's also, just that we've been doing political stuff since the beginning. If you look at the first 17 articles we published, I think 9 of them were political. So we were always doing both, and that was always the intention of the Babylon Bee from the beginning, is to comment on news, comment on worldviews, satirize the culture. It's a lot of the very best Christian writers of all time, didn't confine themselves to writing about Christian topics. They commented on everything that was going on. You look at someone like Chesterton, who wrote a column in the paper and was always going back and forth with intellectuals of his day. I mean, he commented on everything under the sun. So I think we can't really restrict ourselves and say, Christian comedians must joke about Christian things, because that's how we kind of get confined to this cultural ghetto when it comes to content creation. But at the same time, I mean, there is some truth to the fact that we just basically milked the worship leader jokes to the bone to where, that we weren't getting any more milk out of that cow. So there is some truth to the fact that when you start satirizing current events, it's a completely bottomless well of content, because every day, especially in 2021, there's something new to joke about. But yeah, I mean, I think there's some truth to it, and I think there's also just that's the way things went.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Crossway to send me my cardboard cutout of John Piper, because that would be a great thing to have in my office here. For somebody, jumping into this book, like what do they need to know in terms of, obviously it's extremely humorous. You're forcing us to wrestle with difficult issues, but like that balance of, yes, it's humor, but we want to bring you into a conversation about difficult things that we're facing culturally. Maybe for the person who's in the know and knows the Babylon Bee and knows what to expect, and maybe the person who picks this up on the shelf at Barnes and Noble, like, oh my gosh, what have I just fallen into? Like, what do you need to tell each of those kind of two different audience members or readers, if you will?
Yeah, for the people who have followed the Babylon Bee, I mean, this is kind of one of our classic visual humor collections. It's almost all new content, but it's our kind of stick figure humor and kind of the guide or field guide style. So we're kind of telling you how to be woke, and we're doing it with funny stick figures and bears, which is just wonderful. For the person who hasn't heard of the Babylon Bee, we hope they pick it up, open to a page. Every single page is hilarious. So I hope, they open it up and look at it and say, this is something I could read in the bathroom and and get a good laugh over. But depending on their political leanings, they may open it and be more shocked than anything. So we await the email that we've been pulled from the shelves at Barnes & Noble any day now.
I can guarantee somebody somewhere is going to send you letters or emails. And quite honestly, anytime you can invoke the she-bears to come out and dealing with the people who are making fun of you, I mean, hey, that's a good day. That's really my favorite part of Scripture, to be honest. This is the first book I've ever encountered or read where it's dedicated to Joseph Stalin. Why that dedication? I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, well, I mean, we just wanted to honor the woke hero, Joseph Stalin. He's a champion of the oppressed. And you don't see that many books dedicated to Joseph Stalin anymore, so we wanted to help him out. He's a little marginalized and kind of on the fringes nowadays, and that's what we do. We lift up the oppressed here at the Babylon Bee.
And I love, not unlike your previous book, How to Be a Perfect Christian, you gave me kind of a timeline or a continuum to figure out how I get to be like Jesus. In this book, you have a roadmap to our woke journey. And I discovered that some of my media habits might cause me to be red-pilled or keep me from falling too much into the woke category. But why the roadmap? What's funny with that? What are people going to realize with that?
Well, I'm a huge board game nut. I'm a big board game nerd. So I've got hundreds of board games at my home. And I said, what better way to kind of show the woke journey than the kind of the branching paths of one of these classic, Candyland style games or whatever. And so, yeah, I love that one because you're almost to getting fully woke down the path, and then it branches off because you accidentally watched a Jordan Peterson video, and that sends you down the rabbit hole of the alt-right on YouTube. So we thought that was a good analogy for the way that they do these things, because that is kind of how they see things. Is like people are going to public school, they're getting the right information, they're getting they're on their journey, and then oh no, they watched a Jordan Peterson video and we've lost their mind, and you get a lot of hand-wringing in the media over that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I also really appreciated the oppression identifier. I did that exercise this morning, and I discovered I am a Cyclopean, omnigender Pacific Islander who can't spell for crap. So I've always wondered how I could be marginalized or what my victim status was. I'm probably going to have to process that to figure out how that's going to work out in my life. But it's all these little fun call out things throughout the book that I think are just hilarious. Some people are probably going to be offended by them, but yet I can say that the whole time I was looking through the book, I was just chuckling. I think my children thought I was like sucking some kind of crazy happy gas up here. I was laughing so hard I was crying. It's just really that good.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, you're probably sucking no more happy gas than normal, I guess.
Right. Right. Coffee and happy gas. It's how we keep things going up here on the podcast. Um, in terms of like broad, paint with a broad brush in terms of topics and themes you cover. What falls under the umbrella of being woke? I feel like we started like woke meant this, 2 or 3 years ago, and what falls under that umbrella just keeps growing and growing and growing. So like broad themes, what are some of the things you poke fun at in the book?
Yeah, well, that's the thing about wokeness, right? Is that it's not really well defined, and it kind of started out as this very specific, narrow term that maybe a lot of us could agree with, where you say like there's specific ethnic communities that felt like, oh, we've been oppressed, and now we're getting woke, and now we are, now we're struggling and fighting against injustice, and there's elements of that that we can all agree with. But then wokeness sort of took on this new turn now where it's kind of synonymous with cultural Marxism and critical race theory. And really, it's just, I mean, at its core, it is this Marxist construct that there's only two kinds of people in the world, the oppressed and the oppressor. And so when you start to look at everything through that lens, it's going to start to touch and ruin everything. And that is kind of the tack we take in the book, is that we start talking about what is wokeness. And then, like you said, we help you pick your oppressed identity and your pronouns and all of that. And then from there, I mean, the book could have been 10 times as long, because you can write about anything now. And, it's an exercise. You can go on Google and type in, is this thing racist? Is math racist? Are hats racist? And you're going to find an article of somebody actually arguing that, or why it's problematic or toxic or whatever, because that is what wokeness does. Is it makes you miserable. That's the point of it. It's to make you say, I cannot be content in life because there is these shadowy figures out there somewhere who are oppressing me, and I will never be able to fully overcome that oppression. It really is deadly, and it really is this driver of misery. Biblically, we're content. We know that there's evil in the world. We know that there's injustice in the world, but we're just so blessed. I mean, just to wake up in the morning and to breathe air and to see sunshine is like such a blessing and a privilege to the Christian. And then when you look at the world that starts to get deceived and infected with this wokeness, they really do start to just be absolutely miserable with everything, where even good things like sunsets and mathematics are evil to them when you start to see them through the Marxist lens.
Yeah, it definitely sucks the life out of
Yeah.
everything. I just love that you touched on kind of all the thing. I feel like you're touching on all the things that we've maybe not said out loud, but have been really many of us have been thinking for the last couple of years. I love the chapter on the true story of American history, especially the picture of Columbus. He's got his leftist tears tumbler in his pocket. He's got his rosary nunchucks. Set a few things straight for us on Columbus. Anything we need to know? I mean, we did just celebrate Columbus Day not too long ago, and a lot of people want us to just forget about him.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just, as a behind the scenes thing, the chapter on American history it was kind of hard to write. It was hard to put together because I think it's difficult when you're trying to write comedy, is that you are trying to point something out and you're trying to exaggerate. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, are there bad things about America's past? Absolutely, and that's not what we're saying. So you always want to make sure when you're writing satire that you don't want to take this position that then all of a sudden people are thinking, oh, well, you're defending slavery or whatever, stuff like that. But I think, again, when you look at everything through this lens of oppression, then you have to be born into modern day America. You have to say, I am in the worst country ever on the face of the planet, and I have it worse than anyone has ever had it. And we haven't made any progress, with these issues of race and, ending slavery and the civil rights movement. You cannot take those things and say, what a blessing that for the first time in human history, like, slavery is not the norm. That's amazing. For the first time in human history, we have a place that really upholds human liberty as its core value. That's amazing. That shouldn't have happened. If there was no God, that would not have happened. And so that's kind of the approach that we try to take in the American history chapter, is to, and obviously satirically and through the lens of parody, we say, how does the left see America? And this is the worst place ever. This is a uniquely evil country because that's how they have to see things in order to push their agenda and make you miserable.
Yeah, I mean, the irony of it is, even though America is apparently the worst place to live in the world, nobody ever leaves. They're just going to stick it out here, suffering to continue fighting that good fight. I love kind of the list of oppressions today here in America. People are walking down the street and they are forced to see American flags. So strange that you'd see flags from the country that you're in, or the baker in Colorado who I've interviewed before, where there's no end of lawsuits because he won't make cakes for gay weddings. I mean, it's just a strange time. I feel like, have you not ever gone outside of the United States? Do you not know any level of history? The things that we say are oppressing us these days are nothing compared to what's happening elsewhere in the world, or some of the things that we've encountered in history. A little bit of perspective, I think, could go a long way. Let's jump now into another important chapter: how to make sure that your church is as woke as Jesus. For a lot of us in 2020, we learned a lot about our churches. Some of us left our churches because all of a sudden, what our churches were about pivoted quite significantly. I'm speaking some out of my own experience, but I'd love for you to speak to some of the ways that we can know that Jesus was actually quite woke. I think that was another favorite part of the book for me.
Yeah, well, this is the great sin of Christians today, right? Is that we have to see Jesus through our own political lens, and obviously in this book we're parodying that on the left. It happens on the right too. But anytime somebody says like, "What was Jesus a Democrat or was Jesus a Republican or was he a socialist?" doesn't understand fundamentally what the gospel was about. Jesus didn't come to push this political agenda. And you can look at his last week on earth when he entered Jerusalem, and his followers thought he was going to go overthrow Rome. They wanted him to go straight to Pilate and overthrow Roman rule. And instead he went to the temple and he confronted their hypocrisy and their self-righteousness. He went to the seat of religion rather than the seat of politics. That's what Jesus does. And so, you see it on the left now, where unironically people will post pictures of Jesus. Jesus would have worn a mask, or Jesus in a Black Lives Matter shirt, and this and that, and you're just like, that is not the message of Jesus. And Jesus isn't here to affirm your political worldview. Jesus is here to call you to repentance, and that's true on the left and the right. But yeah, we go through all these different ways that Jesus is woke, like the way that he took 90% of the rich young rulers' earnings in order to create free health care. My favorite one is when Lazarus died, Jesus raised him from the dead so that he could vote Democrat.
Yeah, I think of those, that was definitely my favorite. My second favorite was Jesus hung out with the tax collectors to thank them for their work. I thought that was also pretty clever. Another favorite section later in the book was you called out Antifa's weaknesses. Now, to be fair, based on what popular media says, I'm not sure that Antifa actually exists. I'm still kind of jury out on that based on what I see in the news.
It's just an idea, yeah.
Yeah, it's just an idea. It's just an idea. Ignore what you see on conservative social media. It's not really true. But yeah, why poke fun at that? I feel like that was something over the past couple of years where it was in the popular news cycle for a while. It's fallen out of the popular news cycle. You still see people talking about it in more conservative spaces, but why poke fun at that? And yeah, thoughts on Antifa?
I mean, Antifa is just a fantastic bottomless pit of of comedic material. Because I was going to say bottomless well, but I think a pit is better for Antifa. But what's so wonderful about Antifa is that they think they're fighting the Nazis, and then they look in the mirror and realize that the true Nazi was inside them all along. Which is just great. I mean, in order to say that you are the one who is fighting fascism, and you do it by marching through the streets and beating people up, getting mad. There was that video from DC a year ago or so where they got mad that the lady wouldn't raise her fist and do the special salute that they have. I mean, what do you think the Nazis did? And there's videos of Antifa burning Bibles and burning books, and you say, maybe the real Nazi is right there. It's one of my favorite Babylon Bee articles that we did, was like, in order to punch a Nazi, Antifa guy has to punch a mirror, and that's how he ends up finally punching a Nazi. But that's kind of what we do in that chapter. And this is my favorite chapter in the book, is even the title, How to Fight Fascism with Violence. And we show all the, we give you some Antifa fight moves, how you can effectively punch a Nazi. and various creative ways to do that. And so, yeah, Antifa's always, we could have done the whole book on Antifa, frankly.
Yeah, that is definitely my favorite part of the book. And really, the reality is history repeats itself. I feel like this is one of the ditches we really need to be aware of. When we have a complete ignorance of history or a very small shaped perspective on history, we are destined to repeat the same sins of those that came before us. But in terms of Antifa weaknesses, my two favorites there, feeding them Chick-fil-A, I thought that was a good one. Andy No Tweets, again, another good way to rattle the cages of Antifa, and then share a slightly different opinion. And that's just going to send them running.
It's the Achilles heel right there. Yeah.
Pretty much. Before we wrap up, I guess the place I'd like to land would be entertainment. We've seen a lot of interesting pivots in entertainment the last couple of, months, last couple of years. All of a sudden, entertainment isn't just about telling a story anymore. It's about sharing an agenda and indoctrinating you to a bunch of crazy ideas, even down to Blue's Clues, kids shows. The stuff that we've seen in the last 6 to 12 months is just kind of mind-boggling. So talk to us a little about entertainment and indoctrination. You have a great chapter on that in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing about entertainment is that it's telling a story, using a narrative is such an effective way to communicate a worldview. And it just much like satire, how our humor, people don't even, with a really good joke that we tell, people don't even really see that you're sharing a message or a point until after they've laughed. Maybe even more so with a story. Kids are watching a Disney movie and they like Elsa because she's pretty and shoots ice out of her hands, and that there's a funny talking snowman, and they don't even realize, as a parent, as you've watched Frozen 2 178 times or whatever.
We all have.
And you don't even realize, maybe that it's teaching you this existentialist worldview that you need to go out and find meaning in yourself, and you are your own savior, and you are your own meaning. You define your own meaning. I mean, what a great way to communicate that absolutely evil worldview. And that's what we see in entertainment. I think the comedy that we find there is that the woke people, the woke crowd, really control 99% of these corporate entertainment sources. But they're constantly telling stories about being oppressed, and they always kind of identify with the Aladdin type character who's the oppressed person that just needs to fight against the rich people, or whatever. But really, they are the villain in the story, and they don't even realize it. And I think a lot of times you have good values that come out through entertainment just by accident, because a good story will always prevail over that kind of message. But the left has been very good at using narrative to communicate worldview, where we on the right haven't been as good at it. Christian movies obviously tend to be very on the nose, and not, they put the message first rather than the art form, and they tend not to be as good for that reason. So the left has just had an absolute stranglehold on that industry, and we point out a lot of the fun things that now that wokeness is really taking control of the left and taking control of these liberals who run the corporate entertainment, that they run into all sorts of bizarre things, like you mentioned, Blue's Clues having a drag queen host, and how do we even parody that? I don't even know. We have to dig deep to find some way to make it more absurd than that.
Yeah, the real news is actually worse than anything you could do satire-wise in terms of a story like that. Well, even shows that have been around for 4 or 5 years. I've recently been trying to make my way through the modern MacGyver series, and like seasons 1 to 3 were semi-tolerable. Season 4 got a little weird, and then season 5, which came out this year, it was all woke craziness, environmental. Like the themes all of a sudden just fell off a cliff, and you're like, okay, you hired a bunch of millennial writers, I guess, during the downturn in the pandemic to write that season. But it's just fascinating to me where you could have something that started out tolerably for several seasons, and then the agendas just came out like never before. So yeah, very, very strange times we live in entertainment wise.
Yeah, but what's encouraging is the left is really becoming the awkward Christian movies now. I mean, that's now what you see, is that you watch a Netflix show and you go, okay, we have the LGBT character, we have the character who's half person of color, we have the and they go through all these different check boxes, and it's just so cringy and obvious what they're doing that it just becomes bad art.
Yeah, I mean, you actually lose the story. You're so confused by all the characters and everything that just had to go into the film or the TV series, that whatever story there was got lost right out of the gate, so to speak. I don't think we have time to go into this, but I did appreciate the chapter on, I believe it was parents, and you said parents were parents and children, parents were the great oppressor. But I really appreciated problematic TV shows that you guys talked about. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, a white man literally owns an entire neighborhood because, of course, he does. And then another favorite of mine there was Thomas the Tank Engine. All their shipments are actually guns and ammo for right-wing militias. That's one of the things I think has been fascinating about the season that we've been in is we're starting to reconsider everything from, all of our entertainment and any other kind of history. We must consider it all through a modern lens. And, that's really unfair to, the people who created those shows and the message they're trying to communicate. If everything, history, entertainment has to be through this very nuanced modern lens, we're going to fail to even be able to see or process what those folks were trying to communicate with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what wokeness does. Like I said, its worldview is to make you miserable. And so it's going to take anything good, anything in the past, and it's going to try to sever your connection with tradition and good things.
Everything is just canceled. That's all there is to it. In terms of the reader takeaway, it's going to be a fun journey. You're going to laugh. You're probably going to cry a little bit. You're going to maybe offend people at Thanksgiving and Christmas. But when people get to the end of the book, like, what's that takeaway? How do you hope you've impacted them, provoked them? What's shifted for them?
Yeah, primarily we hope that we've just made them laugh on every single page. As a secondary goal, we do want to kind of expose and shine a light on things like wokeness, and we really do hope that this can do this in a fun way. Wokeness is almost self-parodying, so we didn't have to do too much work. But we hope we did manage to kind of hold up a mirror of sorts to people on the left to show kind of just how ridiculous and self-defeating the entire system is.
And Kyle, in terms of people connecting with you guys, finding out more about the book, where do we discover you on the web?
Yeah, you can follow us at babylonbee.com and then all the different social media platforms, and the book is available everywhere, Amazon, etc.
And like we do with every episode, we'll have links in the show notes to all the places you can connect with the Babylon Bee and places where you can pick up your very own copy of their new book as well. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Kyle Mann. Once again, our book today was The Babylon Bee Guide to Wokeness. And Kyle, I want to say thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.